Joining us now for more, Leslie Marshall, syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor, and John Hart, editor-in-chief at Opportunity Lives, a conservative news site. It's great to have you both. We'd like to focus, we've got a lot of headlines today, but focus on the historic nature, Leslie, of this vote taking place with the vice president having to be that tiebreaker to confirm for the very first time in our history a cabinet nominee. What does that tell us about our current state of government?
Divided, like the country, and we've seen that for election cycle for decades now after election cycle. And I think it goes to more than politics, because we saw two Republicans who I think had the guts to break ranks with their party and listen to their constituents. And I think we're going to see in the future more people do that. We've seen Democrats in the past do that with this, and not just Supreme Court nominees and cabinet members, but also with legislation moving forward. And I hope that will lead to a less 50-50 divided nation as we see today.
John, how do you see it?
Well, I think what we see is a paradigm shift happening in education and a lot of issues around the country. Betsy DeVos was opposed so strongly because she's an existential threat to the teachers' unions and the education establishment that, quite frankly, is more interested in protecting adults than kids. And the fact is, the left has had its way for 50 years in this country on education. We've tried the Patty Murray way, we've tried the Chuck Schumer way. We've doubled per pupil spending since 1970. Scores have flatlined. We've even cut student-to-teacher ratio almost in half. Again, no increase in performance. So Betsy DeVos represents reform. She represents shifting power away from politicians, away from union operatives, and towards parents and kids.
It's interesting.
And that's why she was opposed.
You both give a really different take on it. Leslie, you talked a little bit more about the philosophy, the big picture about government overall in the country. John, you're really talking about the issue and saying the issues are really at stake here. Leslie, respond to John. He's saying this is an issue-based situation, this vote. It has really nothing to do with the broader picture necessarily. What do you say?
Oh, I disagree wholeheartedly. I mean, this is not just about, oh, Democrats. And by the way, if you say this is about preserving the unions from Democrats, this is clearly about trying to get rid of all unions, teachers' unions as well, by the right. The problem is that Ms. DeVos is not qualified for her position. She has not attended public school. Her children didn't go to public school. She didn't work within the public schools. And her ideas will really hurt children that are already being hurt and not helped by education. Who are minorities or disabled or impoverished living in rural areas.
To John's point, one of the questions and you can correct me if I'm wrong, John, one of the questions he is asking is what is so great about the system right now? This is a nominee that's going to disrupt what's been the past and a record that's not great in the school system, so she's different. But she's not necessarily bad. Leslie, she's going to be the next Secretary of Education, so now what?
Well, first of all, we have to see what she's going to put forth. The problem is a lot of the questions that she was asked show that she doesn't have a knowledge of the actual issues with regard to the school system, specifically regarding disabled, handicapped children is one example. In addition to that, we have to look at, well, what is she going to do for the majority of American children who attend public schools and the majority of the parents throughout the country who are happy with the quality education that they are getting? Certainly there are problems. I live in L.A. L.A. Unified has its problems. Detroit, another city that has its problems. But fortunately for our public school system nationwide, in our 50 states of this nation, that is the exception, not the rule, although some of those have larger numbers and are the focus of what she and other Republicans want us to look at.
Are Democrats missing the point? In that there's a cabinet nominee that's now going to be a cabinet member that will disrupt the status quo. Yes, there's a risk, as Leslie's pointing out. But what is this about in the election, the bigger picture about what the election was about, and getting someone that's a disruptor into a position of power?
No, that's exactly right. And look, I think Leslie's response just illustrated the extent to which the left is going overboard in terms of opposing Betsy DeVos. Look, she is going to ask hard questions. She's moving away from this Washington knows best mentality towards a system where parents know best. That's why she's opposed, has been opposed so strongly. And again, look, we've tried this approach before. We've doubled spending. It hasn't worked. We've shrunk class size. That hasn't worked. What Betsy DeVos represents is a changing of the guard, is a move away from Washington knows best, Chuck Schumer knows best environment to one in which parents and teachers are given the authority and the power to send their kids to the best school of their choice.
So let's go back to the broader point that you were bringing up, Leslie, and John's point of changing of the guard. That could be applied to a lot of the cabinet nominees. For example, Stephen Mnuchin for Treasury Secretary, someone that is not a government person, someone from the private sector. But what about the Democrats and what they're going to do over the next several days? They are going to try to repeat, it's our understanding, the pattern of trying to delay what's the inevitable, right, which is that these nominees will become part of the cabinet. Why do that now? Why do that? What's in it for the Democrats?
Well, you have to remember, left and right, there are people that have their jobs, and their jobs completely depend on their districts, their constituents, and the voters. In 2 years, there are many of these people left and right that are up for re-election. I think if we look at Ms. Murkowski and Ms. Collins as an example of that, you have to listen to your voters. If Democrats stand back and do nothing and remain spineless, not only is their job in jeopardy, but they're not doing what their constituents elected them to do. So quite frankly, they're doing what they can only do, even though it ends up being in the long term symbolic. It is a big symbolism needed by the constituents of the Democratic Party.
A quick final thought from you, John. Will that pay off for Democrats? Will it pay off for Republicans?
No, I think Democrats are doubling down on the old failed policies of the past. They're the new party of no ideas. They don't have a different direction. Republicans have a better way, a different vision, and what we saw today was a move towards that with the confirmation of Betsy DeVos.
Well, Leslie, I knew that was a juicy thing that he kind of threw up there at the end, so we'll have to talk about that. We'll have a further debate on that a little bit later on as well. Leslie, John, great to have you. We hope to have you both back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.